This is a coded message. It was mailed to a newspaper in California in November 1969 by a serial killer who called himself the Zodiac. It sat unsolved for 51 years. In that time, law enforcement agencies, professional cryptographers, and thousands of amateur codebreakers around the world tried to crack it. None of them could. Then, in 2020, a team of 3 amateur codebreakers, a mathematician in the United States, a programmer in Australia, and a teacher in Belgium, solved it from their homes using software and determination. What the cipher said when it was finally decoded was not a confession. It was not a name. It was something far more unsettling. But before we get to that, we need to understand who sent it, and why, after more than 50 years, the Zodiac Killer has never been identified. This is the Zodiac case. Between 1968 and 1969, at minimum 5 people were murdered in Northern California by a killer who would go on to become one of the most studied and most discussed unsolved cases in American criminal history. The victims were young. Most were couples, attacked in or near their cars at night. The locations were spread across the Bay Area: Benicia, Vallejo, Lake Berryessa, and San Francisco itself. The attacks were sudden, brutal, and seemingly random. What made this killer different from others was not the murders themselves. It was what came after. He wrote letters. Detailed, taunting letters sent directly to newspapers: the San Francisco Chronicle, the San Francisco Examiner, and the Vallejo Times-Herald. He demanded they print his letters on the front page. He threatened to kill more people if they refused, and he signed every letter with a crosshair symbol, a circle with a cross through it, that became one of the most recognizable symbols in the history of American crime. He called himself the Zodiac. Over the following years, Zodiac sent at least 13 confirmed letters to newspapers and investigators. Several contained ciphers, coded messages he claimed contained his identity. He taunted police. He referenced his victims. He kept count of his kills. And then, sometime in the mid-1970s, the letters stopped. The Zodiac was never caught, was never identified with certainty, and may never be. The confirmed victims of the Zodiac Killer are 5 people whose names deserve to be remembered clearly. David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen were 17 and 16 years old. They were shot and killed near their car on Lake Herman Road in Benicia on December 20th, 1968. It was their first date. Darlene Farron, 22, and Michael Mageau, 19, were shot in a car park in Vallejo on July 4th, 1969. Farron died. Mageau survived and became one of the few people to see the Zodiac's face. Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were attacked at Lake Berryessa on September 27, 1969. The Zodiac approached them wearing a hood with his symbol on it and tied them up before stabbing them repeatedly. Shepard died. Hartnell survived. Paul Stein, a 29-year-old taxi driver, was shot in San Francisco on October 11, 1969. The Zodiac cut a piece of Stein's shirt and later mailed it to newspapers as proof. The Zodiac himself claimed to have killed 37 people. That number has never been verified. Investigators have confirmed 5 deaths and 2 survivors. The true total, if there is one beyond 5, remains unknown. The Zodiac sent 4 ciphers in total. 3 have been solved. 1 has not. The first cipher, known as the 408, because it contained 408 characters, was sent in 3 parts to 3 different newspapers in July 1969. The Zodiac claimed it contained his identity. A high school teacher named Donald Hardin and his wife solved it within a week. It did not contain his name. Instead, it described his motivation, a chilling passage about collecting slaves for the afterlife that forensic psychologists have analyzed for decades. The second cipher, known as the 340, was sent in November 1969. It contained 340 characters arranged in a grid of symbols, many of them the same as the 408 but arranged differently, with deliberate misdirections built in to defeat standard code-breaking techniques. It defeated professional cryptographers for 51 years. In December 2020, David Orenchak, a web developer in Virginia, working with mathematician Sam Blake in Australia and paper engineer Jarl van Eyck in Belgium, cracked it. They had been working on it for years. The breakthrough came when they identified that the cipher read in a non-standard direction, not left to right, but in a specific diagonal and reverse pattern the Zodiac had deliberately disguised. When decoded, the 340 cipher read in part, he wrote about not being afraid of the gas chamber because it would send him to paradise early, where he would have enough slaves to work for him. It was not a confession. It was not a name. It was the voice of someone who believed what he was doing was purposeful. That revelation, 51 years after it was written, was arguably more disturbing than silence would have been. The third cipher, known as the 13-character cipher, or Z13, was sent with a greeting card in 1970. It has never been solved. Many cryptographers believe it is too short to decode without additional context. Some believe it contains the killer's name. The fourth cipher, known as Z32, was sent in 1970 and claimed to contain the location of a bomb. It has never been fully solved either. 2 ciphers cracked, 2 still waiting. The investigation into the Zodiac Killer spanned multiple jurisdictions, multiple decades, and multiple law enforcement agencies. It is one of the most extensively documented cold cases in American history. In the immediate aftermath of the murders, investigators had very little physical evidence. The Zodiac was careful. He left no usable fingerprints. The DNA technology that exists today did not exist in 1969. Witness descriptions were limited and inconsistent. In 1971, the San Francisco Police Department developed a composite sketch based on the description of Paul Stine's killer from witnesses. That sketch, a heavy-set white man with dark hair and glasses, became the most widely circulated image associated with the case. It remains unverified as an accurate likeness. Over the decades, investigators have looked at hundreds of suspects. The most prominent of these was Arthur Lee Allen, a convicted sex offender from Vallejo who was investigated extensively by detectives. Allen matched several circumstantial criteria. He wore a Zodiac brand watch, he had expressed interest in the concept of hunting humans, and at least one survivor identified him in a lineup. However, Allen's handwriting did not match the Zodiac's letters. DNA collected from the letters did not match Allen. He was never charged. He died in 1992. In 2018, a private investigation group publicly named a man called Gary Francis Post as their primary suspect, citing physical similarities and alleged evidence from his darkroom. The FBI did not confirm this identification. Many forensic experts disputed the methodology. The case remains officially unsolved. The San Francisco Police Department lists the Zodiac case as an active investigation to this day. As with every case on this channel, let us separate what we know from what we do not know. We know 5 people were murdered. We know the killer wrote detailed letters and sent coded messages to newspapers. We know 2 of those ciphers have been solved, and the decoded content reveals a calculating, delusional mind. We know DNA from the letters exists, but has not matched any confirmed suspect. What we do not know is who he was. The first unanswered question is identity. Despite decades of investigation, hundreds of suspects, DNA evidence, handwriting analysis, and cipher decryption, no one has been charged with the Zodiac murders. The DNA from the envelope seal of the letters exists in a database. It has not matched anyone in that database yet. The second unanswered question is the true victim count. The Zodiac claimed 37 kills. Investigators confirmed 5. The gap of 32 is either a fabrication designed to inflate his notoriety, or it represents murders that were never connected to him. Both possibilities are disturbing in different ways. The third unanswered question is the Z13 cipher. If it genuinely contains his name, the answer to the most fundamental question in this case has been sitting in a public archive since 1970, unsolved, waiting. The Zodiac Killer wrote his last confirmed letter in 1974. He was never heard from again. Whether he died, whether he stopped, whether he is still alive, no one knows. If he was 25 in 1969, he would be in his late 70s today. The two unsolved ciphers, Z13 and Z32, remain open to anyone willing to try. The team that cracked the 340 after 51 years were not professional cryptographers. They were an amateur working from home, a mathematician, and a teacher. The Z13 may be waiting for the right person with the right approach. Perhaps that person is watching this video right now. Zodiac Killer sent 37 kills worth of taunts to newspapers and investigators and was never caught. 5 families never got justice, and somewhere in a California archive, 2 coded messages may still hold the answer to who he was. What do you think? Is the Z13 cipher his name? And do you believe the true victim count was 5 or 37? Drop your theory in the comments. I read every single one, and the best ones genuinely shape how I approach these cases. We are on the countdown to 100,000 subscribers. Every person who subscribes brings us one step closer to the reveal. Thank you for being part of this. I will see you in the next video.